Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. For those that don't know, there's been a lot of pressure on the VA employees, and there's also been pay struggles within the medical community at the VA. So we've been seeing over the last several years an exit, a quicker than normal exit from VA employment. Now, what this does is it creates a horrible environment. As anybody who's been in any sort of a management position understands that once that starts to happen, then you're looking at, well, let's fill the gaps with the employees we do have, which means what? Overtime. And when you start making overtime mandatory, it's okay for the first couple paychecks, but then your employees start to get burned out. And that's basically what we're starting to see here as the pressure mounts at the VA. We're seeing some adverse effects. The headline here is, as I scroll back up to it for you, thousands of workers leave the VA amid flood of new cases and quota demands. So you already have a very unstable, right, workforce that's already being pulled. And now we're throwing more demands at them, and something's going to break somewhere. So that's what we're looking at. Hit the thumbs up for me, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. Now let's jump into it. Claims processors with the Department of Veterans Affairs say rigid quota systems pits their livelihoods against the veterans they signed up to help. Now, I'll tell you this too. Don't forget that also there was some legislation put into place to help the VA fire the non-performers. So in some cases, I'm not going to say all, but in some cases you may have non-performers who are protected by unions. In some cases, right? There's obviously good workers, bad workers, no matter what. But in some cases you're going to have a worker who may have been a non-performer who now is starting to maybe see some writing on the wall, and some of those might be in this as well, right? Oh my gosh, I'm getting more work and more quotas, and I'm being, we'll call it micromanaged, and I'm not performing anyway, writing's on the wall, and maybe these people are leaving. So there's all kinds of different reasons. Now, let's go a little further on here. States here, claims processors with the Department of Veterans Affairs say they have strained to keep up with the flood of new cases brought on by the PACT Act and an existing quota system that pits their livelihoods against the veterans they signed up to help as a growing number of processors leave the job. The PACT Act expanded benefits to millions of veterans exposed to toxic substances when it was enacted in August of last year. That was 2022. But that has stressed the VA workers tasked with moving cases along amid a backlog. Mandatory overtime, right? Inadequate training and quota demands, according to 2 former claims processors and 4 current processors who spoke to NBC News on the condition of anonymity out of fear of retaliation. So it's just a horrible recipe is the bottom line, right? So the processors were struggling to manage the workload even before the PACT Act, with more than 2,000 having resigned or retired since 2020. The number of departures has grown each year, data shows. The PACT Act came in like a bull. One of the current processors said, morale is on the floor, meaning very low, right? So morale sucks. Another employee said at least 25 new claims enter her queue each day. On top of that, the cases she did get, she did not get to the day before. So, you got 25, you got through whatever, 15 of them, you get 25 more, now you got 35, right? So you're just a deeper and deeper hole. Confused by the new regulation. Oh, and on top of that, by the way, and I don't know if it's in this article, the new systems, all these new systems that are trying to get implemented as well. So, confused by the new regulations under the PACT Act, she said she began making multiple errors on the first time on the job, which lowered her performance scores during 3 monthly quality checks and delayed a scheduled promotion. It's impossible, she said. You're falling in sand and you can't get out of it. The VA launched an aggressive hiring push to prepare for the surge in claims and now has about 12,900 processors. Nearly 5,000 of them joined in 2022 and more than 6,500 were brought on board in 2023, the agency said. But seasoned workers worry about mounting pressures of the job and will keep the door revolving, right? So it's this revolving door. You're filling a bucket with holes in it. The VA has become a turnstile for employees, the third claim processor said. You see a lot of people come and a lot of people go, especially now with this point system. It's crushing people. An unattainable demand. The VA has been using an official quota system since 2017 to measure performance, which the agency said is critical to providing efficient, accurate claims decisions. Under the so-called standard system, veteran service representatives or VA claims processors have to earn a certain number of points per pay period by completing specific tasks, the VA said. That includes verifying information and gathering the medical and service records or other supporting documents needed to determine a veteran's eligibility. But because the claims in the last few years have become more complex with the new processes and additional eligibility metrics, processors say it often takes hours to properly review a veteran's service records, significantly extending the total processing time, reducing their chances to earn other points, and often leading to errors that lower their performance scores. And I'm going to pause there. This is why I always say it's crucial to develop your claim when you go to submit it to the VA. Make sure everything's in there, all your pieces are together. And if it were me, what I would do is I would put that checklist on there, right? Here's my 5 conditions. Condition 1 is page 2, 3, 4, and this is what this is, and this, and on, right? So you just kind of have an index of your evidence and have everything tied in, right? Your nexus, your diagnosis, all that stuff, to make it easy. Moving on, it's like this flow chart that is like 1,000 pages long, and you're under so much strain, said Nancy Gwynn, who processed claims for the VA Houston office for about 6 years. If I review all of this, then I won't make my points, and I will be terminated. Gwynn, 63, and a single mother to 2 teenagers, worried she would lose her job if she spent too much time on a case. She said it was easier and quicker to look for the first thing that would discredit a claim and close it out rather than find ways to approve it. There's a golden nugget, right? It's not the nugget we want to hear, but it tells you what you need to work around. You have processors who are fearful of losing their job, so they aren't looking at all the evidence, right? So you need, again, to make it as easy as possible for them to see what they need to see and rule essentially in your favor, right? So let's move on. It stresses our own internal ethics, said Gwynn, a Navy veteran who retired in 2020 because of job stress and physical health issues. It's an unattainable request to make on anybody. A current employee who has processed claims for the VA for more than a dozen years said the point system has become more stressful and stringent in the past year as the workload has doubled. They're trying to crack the whip, he said. You don't get too much breathing room. By the time you complete all of your cases, you have to take a deep breath and jump right back in again. In a statement from VA Press Secretary Terrence Hayes said the agency did not define the acceptable amount of time that processors should spend on a particular case because each claim is unique. The point system, he said, is based on total work processed and not the total number of claims processed. Some employees say there's a heavy focus on the volume and it is contradicting demand for thoughtfulness. We don't have enough time to look through every little thing because we got to have so many points a day, one processor said. The supervisor is going to contact me and say, what's going on? And why haven't you touched these claims? About 600 claims processors resigned or retired from the VA in 2022, a 42% jump from roughly 420 in 2020, data shows. The VA said 500 processors left in 2021, and nearly the same number has already resigned or retired this year, as of the end of August. Hayes said that one of the VA's top priorities was supporting processors during a time of increased claims, and that the agency would continue to take steps to better support them. Those steps, he said, include reviewing the standard system, recognizing high performers, hosting town halls, attempting to reduce employee burnout, hiring more people, and adding more training sessions. Nearly 1 million new claims. The VA has received more than 978,000 PACT Act claims since the measure, officially called the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson Honoring Our Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics Act, was signed on August 10th, 2022. It has led compensation claims to increase by nearly 37% from the year before, the agency said. The bill extended eligibility for veterans to about 6.2 million veterans who were exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange radiation, and other toxic substances during their service, according to the agency. Processors have been particularly critical in implementing the new law, Hayes said. They completed more claims than ever in 2021 and 2022 and are on pace to break another record in 2023, he said. But those feats came with challenges. Processors are mandated to work 20 hours of overtime each month when there is a high demand, Hayes said. While they were given a nearly 2-month respite starting in July to help prevent burnout, Hayes said the overtime requirement kicked back in at the end of August. The requirement has been around for 6 years, will last until the end of September as the VA evaluates needs for October. Confusion fills much of those hours. One processor said that she was not given enough training, and the sessions she did sit through were unhelpful because they were mostly delivered online and were recorded, which did not allow people to ask questions. It was kind of like chasing your tail, trying to keep up, she said. You didn't know if you were processing it correctly. No one really knew what to do. Another processor said her team started working on PACT Act claims in January, so they were bombarded with multiple training sessions right before the holiday in 2022. How do you expect people to inhale all of that information, she said. The employee said the job has become overwhelming for both new and seasoned processors. If you're a new person, you ask for help, it's like pulling teeth now, she said. Adding that a new hire on her team recently lasted only a few hours once the processing work began. He went to lunch and he never came back, she said. Wow. On top of that, more than half of the people who work for the benefits unit are veterans themselves, the VA said, meaning some may be dealing with their own service-connected medical and mental health issues. One of which, who became a VA claims processor in 2015 after serving for more than 20 years in the Army, said PTSD, anxiety, and back pain hindered him at work, as did his anger and feeling ineffective. You end up developing an I don't care attitude, he said. When you stop caring, you stop processing claims, you miss stuff. He said that he was written up for not meeting his quota and then put on a performance improvement plan, a PIP. So more than 270 regional office employees, including claims processors and other workers, have been put on performance improvement plans since the quota system took effect in 2017, the VA said. The agency said 136 claims processors were terminated and 27 were demoted because of performance issues in that time period. Rahim, who was the processor that was speaking, age 59, said the job also took an emotional toll when he had to read disturbing details in some of the claims that stemmed from sexual assault. On at least 3 occasions, he said he had to pray and wash up. After a panic attack at work sent him to the hospital in 2019, the disabled combat veteran quit. "No job is worth your health," he said, adding that resigning has alleviated his mental and emotional pain. Now, he says, I grow honey melons and peppermint." Man, that's nice. Long-lasting problems. Even before the PACT Act, the VA's disability compensation program had long-lasting challenges in managing large workloads and making timely decisions. In a 2021 report by the U.S. Government Accountability Office, one of their reports, the report emphasized the importance of properly training claims processors as the VA continues to implement new initiatives, change up its procedures, and hire more staff. The GAO, which is the Accountability Office, began conducting its performance audit in 2020 after the Blue Water Navy Vietnam Veterans Act went into effect. For those that missed the boat on that, well, who didn't know, the Blue Water Navy Vietnam Veterans Act was huge, and what it did was it expanded Agent Orange presumptives out 12 nautical miles. So if you were in the Navy and on a ship but never on land in Vietnam, but you were on a ship within 12 nautical miles of a designated Agent Orange area, now all of a sudden you qualify for those presumptive conditions. Very, very impactful act that went into effect. Extending eligibility to some veterans who were exposed to herbicides. That was the end of that sentence. Every time Congress changes the contracts for veterans, they are more complex for the claims processors to understand, Gwynn said. The PACT Act was an even larger undertaking. The landmark legislation is the most significant expansion in benefits and services for toxic exposed veterans in more than 30 years, the White House said. About 47% of the total number of filed PACT Act claims have been approved so far, according to the latest available public data. Of the roughly 4,100 processed radiation-specific claims, the VA said it rejected more than 3,500 and granted about 570 in the first year of the PACT Act. When asked for data on claims related to burn pits and Agent Orange, the VA said it could not provide specific figures because of labeling issues. Many toxic exposure claims only receive the PACT Act label as opposed to a burn pits or Agent Orange label, which creates challenges when attempting to report down to the claimed exposure type, Hayes said. Meanwhile, there are currently more than 1 million pending disability compensation and pension claims and a backlog of about 297,000 that have stayed unresolved for longer than 125 days, the latest available data shows. In February, the VA discovered that about 32,000 veterans who submitted disability compensation claims online since 2018 have had their claims delayed due to technical issues, the agency said. It's much more than that, right? Hayes said the surge in claims would subside with time, but the workload isn't expected to ease anytime soon. The VA expects the number of disability compensation claims to increase as more than 1 million service members are supposed to depart the military by 2024, according to the GAO. Here's the nugget. You better file your claim now because there's a ton more coming and VA's having many issues. So you better just get in line now instead of waiting. "We feel like machines," said one processor who is also a veteran. But after experiencing bouts of unemployment and homelessness, she said she is determined to do anything to keep her job and the steady paycheck that comes with it. When you go through so much and you're finally stable, you break your neck to hang on to that, she said. And that concludes that full article. Happy to share that with you, and hope you were able to at least pull on a few nuggets out of that on what you can expect with the VA as time moves on. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great one, and remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.